Well, Ethan, back for another album review. We got back to back today on a roll. Today, I'm reviewing an album that I think is excellent. It is such a great album. It's actually this band's fourth. It sounds more like a debut because they had a new singer with this album, and what a fantastic singer he was. You've got a legendary guitarist in this band. They are from the United Kingdom. It has an iconic, amazing cover. It was recorded in late 1969 and early 1970 in around London, England. And it was released June 5th, 1970, so just in time for summer, on Harvest label. And the album is Deep Purple in Rock. This is a fantastic album. I mean, from start to finish, there's no bad song on this album. It rocks hard from beginning to end. In Rock is such a perfect title for this album because it is in rock. It is such a good rock album. Well, Deep Purple, the Richie Blackmore, kind of probably the most famous member of it, the famous guitarist. There he is, up there at the top. Always kind of looking serious. So you had... The band consisted of Richie Blackmore, who was the guitarist, Ian Gillan, the singer. Roger Glover was the organist, I believe. John Lord was the bassist. Or no, John Lord was the... I'm getting confused. Let me look it up. Sorry, bear with me, guys. Richie Blackmore guitar, Ian Gillan vocals, Roger Glover bass, John Lord on the organ, and Ian Pace on the drums. And what a phenomenal drummer Ian Pace is. So what happened was Deep Purple released 3 albums before this, right? Shades of Deep Purple in 1968, The Book of Taliesin, I believe, in 1968 as well, and then Deep Purple, the title album, it's just called Deep Purple, like kind of like it's named after the band. Their third album, and then they fired their old singer, and what happened was Richie Blackmore heard the first Led Zeppelin album, right? And they came to England, and Led Zeppelin blew up at the time, and he was like, okay, this progressive and psychedelic rock and these covers that we've been doing before on our first 3 albums, he wanted to get away from that. He wanted a change of sound, a change of direction, so they decided to get another singer from another band called Episode 6, who was in that band. Ian Gillan was in that band with Roger Glover as well, who was the bassist. So with the addition of those 2 guys, new bassist and a new singer, they released this masterpiece, this landmark of an album in, again, 1970. Rehearsals began at Hanwell Community Center. This was the first album of the what they call the Mark II lineup of the band. Mark I being the first singer, Mark III being when they had David Coverdale in the band, and so forth, which I think those are some great albums too. But this album, this is my favorite Deep Purple album. I think Machine Head might be on some, classic rock album lists is a little higher, but to me, this one's a little better. Some of the songs on Machine Head are a little overplayed and a little tiresome. I just think this is my favorite. The songs are so fresh. They are so rocking from beginning to end. They're hard, they're heavy, they drive. And I see, how their sound shifted dramatically from the previous album to this one. So listening to Led Zeppelin and being influenced by them for Richie Blackmore, that must have worked, because the steps of how much better this album is than the prior one are just huge. It's just a huge leap forward in songwriting and heaviness, and just a great classic rock album. It's really, there's no bad song on this entire album. Let's go ahead and go over the songs. You got Speed King to kick it off. Such a fast, cranking, heavy song. Ian Gillan got some of the lyrics were inspired from Little Richard songs, like Good Golly, Little Miss Molly. And it was actually influenced by, I think, what's his name? The Hendrix song, Into the Fire, not Into the Fire. Hendrix is, I guess it's just called Song. Yeah, Hendrix's Fire. Let me stand next to your fire or whatever. That was what it was based off of. And then you have Bloodsucker, the second track. Such a great song, heavy blues. You got great Hammond organ and great guitar riffs from Richie Blackmore. He was really finding his sound on this album as a young guitarist at 25, and it's just amazing how good he was on this album. Again, I think it was my favorite. I know it's my favorite Deep Purple album. Then you have Child in Time, which is a beautiful song. If you're not familiar with the band, you probably don't know it, but if you are familiar with the band, you definitely know it. It was inspired by the Vietnam War in Vietnam at the time. It's got kind of a slow build-up, kind of a almost. I see some maybe the roots of maybe Judas Priest on that song. Maybe, what's the song? Beyond the Realms of Death. Something like that. Maybe kind of sound like it was influenced by Child in Time. That sort of slow build up and then the screeching vocals with the great guitar solos at the end. I see how that song could have influenced songs like that going forward into the 70s and 80s with metal. Such a phenomenal vocal performance from Ian Gillan. I'm not sure if it's pronounced Gillan or Gillian. I think it's Gillan. I don't think you say Gillian. Such a beautiful song. Again, it's over 10 minutes long. It's a masterpiece from beginning to end. You have screeching, wailing vocals from Ian Gillan. Just a tour de force of a song. Check out Child in Time. Beautiful song. And I'm reading here, it said it subsequently became a de facto anthem for anti-communist resistance groups in Eastern Europe during the period of the Iron Curtain. So it has that sort of anti-war theme, which bands like Black Sabbath and, of course, the Beatles around this time also had. So no surprise that they had a song about that kind of stuff, because a lot of the bands were doing that at the time. So very great sort of anti-war number right there. And then side 2, you have a song called Flight of the Rat. Such a great, underrated Deep Purple song, deep cut sort of. All you hear about with Deep Purple is, Smoke on the Water, greatest riff of all time. Every young guitarist learns that song. And for good reason. It's a great song, and it's an iconic riff. Arguably, probably one of the best riffs of all time. Or most recognizable, maybe, if you will. But Flight of the Rat and some of the other songs on this album just don't get as tiresome as that one from Machine Head. Such a great song, kind of a longer track. You got great solos from Richie Blackmore and great organ from John Lord. Great organs. He does the Hammond organ solos even. With a nice, fuzz, fat sound. This album sounds so heavy, thick, fuzzy, and it just blows out of the speakers, this album. If you turn this album up in the car, you will go. I mean, this is an album that is meant to play loud, very loud. The louder it is, the better it sounds. Be considerate of your neighbors and whatnot. So, I mean, it's just loud, bombastic, in your face, just good rock and roll, good hard rock on this album. See, that's why, to me, I like this one better than Machine Head. Machine Head has like 3 songs that are good. The rest are kind of forgettable. Like, it's kind of overrated. To me, I always found this album to be stronger from beginning to end. I think they were kind of losing it by the time Machine Head came around. This was their peak. I think in rock was Deep Purple's peak. They were just firing on all cylinders right here. They really were. And then you have the next song, Into the Fire. Such a great song. Again, another kind of high screeching vocal from Ian Gillan. Again, I see maybe some roots of Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford here. I see where, that style of singing maybe right here was influential to later metal acts. I don't think I'm wrong in that assumption. I see some Iron Maiden and Judas Priest influence. And then you have a song that they actually wanted to leave off the album because they didn't think it was good enough. But I actually think it's one of the best on the album and one of my personal favorites. It might not be the best on the album, but it's a personal favorite of mine. It's called Living Wreck. It just has such a funky, heavy, groovy riff on it from Richie Blackmore. Just a dun dun. It just kind of makes you bob your head. Great riff. Check out Living Wreck from In Rock. Great riff. I'm so glad they didn't leave it off the album because to me it's a fantastic deep cut and not very well known song from this band. Living Wreck. Check out that song. Great riff. Just carries the whole song. And then the last song is called Lovin Man, which is just a straightforward hard rock song, about love and love lost and lust and, all that stuff. Typical 70s rock. But just clever lyrics, kind of tongue-in-cheek, just fun. Another great riff. This has a sort of a galloping riff, right? Hard Lovin' Man that kind of carries it throughout the song. It was actually based around, I believe, Roger Glover. He came up with a bass line, and then Richie Blackmore kind of mirrored the bass line with his guitar. Hard Lovin' Man, great song, great galloping riff. Again, I keep going back to this, but that galloping riff in Hard Lovin' Man, I see where maybe Iron Maiden and Judas Priest got that sort of galloping riff from Hard Lovin' Man right there. So influential. There's the guys right there looking all kinds of cool. Just a great album sleeve in here. Yeah, that galloping riff just makes me think of Iron Maiden and Judas Priest later. I no doubt they were influenced by these guys. No doubt. Both bands, both Iron Maiden and Judas Priest being from England, these guys being from England, no doubt they were influential. And check out that album cover. That is so cool. Iconic, guys on Mount Rushmore. Kind of a clever, humorous sort of cover there. Probably Richie Blackmore had something to do with that. He had a tendency for being kind of getting his way and being kind of stubborn, hard to work with. But I think a lot of great musicians generally are. They're usually kind of difficult to work with people. I heard some quote once that said, like, there's a fine line between insanity and genius. And so I think somebody like Richie Blackmore probably kind of rides that fine line between insanity and genius. Most great artists do. And in the sleeve, they have a cool little, for each song, they have kind of a phrase or a sentence to kind of sum it up. Speed King, they call it Just a Few Roots Replanted. Bloodsucker, a particularly nasty sort of fellow. There are lots of us. Child in Time. The Story of a Loser, It Could Be You. Flight of the Rat, just to remind you there are other ways of turning on. Into the Fire, Out of the Frying Pan. And Living Wreck, It Takes All Sorts. Support your local groupie. Hard Lovin' Man, for Martin Birch, Catalyst. Martin Birch was the producer for this album, which I didn't mention. Fantastic album. My favorite Deep Purple album by a good bit. Machine Head, Fireball, which is between this and Machine Head, is a great album. Who Do We Think We Are is pretty good. They were starting to kind of fall apart at that point, though. And then Burn with David Coverdale, the next album. And Burn and Stormbringer, those are pretty good albums with David Coverdale, who later went to Whitesnake, as you might know, which is also a good band, I think. But this right here, favorite Deep Purple album, I'll give it a 97.5 out of 100. I'll give it the slight higher score than Uriah Heep, Salisbury. This is just a fantastically hard, heavy, rocking album. I was reading on Wikipedia, they said, a lot of critics and music people were saying the roots of hard rock and heavy metal right here, the roots of it. Not saying it's metal, it's just a heavy, hard rocking, influential album to that scene. So there's no denying its influence on that scene, especially in the United Kingdom. 97 out of 100 for Deep Purple in rock. Get it, listen to it. If you don't want to get it, you can listen to the songs on YouTube. They're all on there for free. YouTube, you can listen to everything, look up anything. You can find any music you want. Do a little research, find out about these guys. I've been reading up on them a little bit, getting their albums, reading about their albums, listening to their albums. Check them out. But to me, this is the best album, Deep Purple in rock, 97 out of 100. Thank you for watching this album review of a fantastic album.